This video will show you how to complete a simple MRP sheet. The template that I provided to you on Excel is slightly different than the one in the textbook. It has been simplified. We have eliminated the schedule receipts from each item. We'll simply add that to inventory on hand and acknowledge that we received it when we did, and show it as inventory on hand instead of making a distinction between scheduled receipts and then it later becoming inventory on hand. It's sort of redundant and not necessary nowadays. The other one that we have eliminated is the planned order receipts and the planned order releases. We assume that you will order. There is what you want to order and what you can order. Once again, we just make that modification, and so we don't make a distinction between those. So we just have place the order. We would assume that you would make that modification if there was something to do with lot sizing, and I'll explain that to you. You are welcome to use this template on your homework just to make an electronic copy of it. It's available to you. On the exam, I'm not going to be able to provide it to you electronically, but it will be on the exam. There will be a blank copy of this template so that you can replicate it in Excel. So you'll have to type these things into Excel. It's not necessary to draw, boxes around the cells and to do the shading and such. Just make sure that you have the correct four labels for the rows for each item, and then the numbers across the top. And we'll show you how that works. So let me go to the example. This is very similar to your homework problem. You only have one homework problem, but there's multiple parts to it. What you have here is information that's similar to your homework problem. Here we have a dresser. It's made up of two main components, a frame and a dresser assembly. There are 5 drawers in this dresser. The drawer assembly is further broken down in that there's a drawer frame and a sliding assembly, and the sliding assembly is further broken down into bearings and rail. For example, the way we would show this, let's say there were 3 components, a frame, a drawer assembly, and then a stand on which the dresser sits. That would be noted right here. This one, there is no children, no subcomponents for frame, and there are no subcomponents for drawer frame. And so it's sort of one-sided in that regards. But you could see how they would, list this in kind of an outline form. It shows the lead time. It also shows if there's any inventory on hand. It shows any lot sizing. If it's blank, it's what we call lot for lot. Sometimes they'll abbreviate this. They'll write an L for L, meaning that you can order exactly what you want. But in this case of rails, we have to order those in 1,000 increments. Think about it as if eggs come in dozens. So if you were to need 6 eggs, well, you would have to order 12, and so you would have 6 left over. We'll see how that works out. And we do acknowledge any scheduled receipts. They will become inventory on hand, but we acknowledge them here in week 5 that we got 50. As compared to these items, these mean that they will be available when needed, but they weren't received necessarily ahead of time. In this case, they want us to do 300 dressers in week 10. We'll show you how to do this. Well, the first thing you need to do is get a visual picture of this beyond just the way we've outlined it here. And so here's the visual picture of that. You have the dresser, the parent, level 0, and then it's broken down into the 2 subcomponents. These are children of the dresser. As I said, frame has no children or subcomponents, but drawer assembly does. We have noted that there are 5 drawers for every dresser. Each drawer has a frame and a sliding assembly. Once again, there's no subcomponents to the frame, but the sliding assembly is made up, for every sliding assembly there's 4 bearings and 1 rail. That's your product structure. You then need to do a time phase. The way to look at a time phase is as after we took the product structure and put it on its side. So here's the dresser, the parent, and the 2 subcomponents. But what we're showing here is the lead time here. So the easiest way to do this in Excel is to make the columns really small and decide how many columns you want to equal a period of time. In this case, we're talking about weeks. We could be days, we could be months, we could use a variety of different time periods for MRP. But the idea is that we want so many dressers by the end of week 10. We know there is a 1 week lead time, and so we don't note that we've just filled this in, this row back to this point, and then I'm showing then the frame and the drawer assembly. Frame is also 1 week, but you'll see the drawer assembly actually takes 2 weeks. So when you look at it this way, you literally back here in week 3, you're having to order the rails. So that 3 weeks later they'll be ready to combine with the bearings to go into the sliding, and the sliding in the drawer frame will be ready by week 7 to go into the drawer assembly, which takes 2 weeks, the frame 1 week, and they will all be done. So this just kind of shows the progression with time in there. Now let me show you how to put this into an MRP sheet. Nowadays, a lot of this is done by the computer, but the reason why we want you to be familiar with it is smaller operations. We'll just use simple sheets like this. More complex operations do use computerized systems where the computer handles this, but still you need to know what the computer is doing in case you need to make modifications or be able to interpret the data. So this is an important skill to learn, otherwise you can really screw up those complex computer systems if you don't understand the basics of MRP. But the idea is here, we told you we wanted 300 dressers in week 10, so we note that on the sheet. There was no inventory on hand, so that's 0. So our requirements, if we subtract the inventory on hand from the gross requirements, that leaves us with 300. And here's where we don't make a distinction like your textbook does in planned order receipts and planned order releases. We simply say, okay, that's what we need. We're going to order 300. There's no lot sizing here, so we can order exactly what we want. And we need a week, so that means in week 9 we need to order 300. So we just note that. Here's where things have to line up. That's one of the things to look at MRP is that this is now the line up point, so frame and drawer assemblies will line up with your dresser. And so there's 1 frame for every drawer assembly, so there's 300 of those. Here's where we get a little bit interesting. Remember back here they noted that we received some frames in week 5. We received 50 of those. Once again, the difference between the simplified version I've given you and what's in your textbook, they separate scheduled receipts and inventory on hand. In this example, we're just going to put it right into inventory. So back in week 5, we received 50, and we'll just show that we've carried that up until now, and then it would become inventory on hand. And so we would note it there. And so we would subtract that. That means that we need 250, and there's a week lead time on that one. So in week 8 we need to order 250, so that a week later we have the 300, the 250 plus the 50 we received back in week 5. That gives our 300 drawer assembly, our 300 frames for our dresser. Drawer assemblies, here's where you need to do some multiplication. So remember, for every dresser, there's 300 we need. You need 5 drawers, so that's 1,500. 5 times 300 is 1,500. We didn't have any inventory on hand, so therefore we still need 1,500. Here, I believe the lead time is a little bit longer. It's 2 weeks. We're showing here 2 weeks. So on our MRP sheet, we need to show back here, we need to order those back in week 7, the 1,500. Now, here's where we're going to line up. Once again, these 2 children, the drawer assembly and the frame, line up with the dresser. Now I'm going to break down the drawer assembly. Now there is 1 drawer frame for every drawer assembly. So 1,500, that lines up right out. There was no inventory on hand, and so I need 1,500, and I don't remember exactly what the lead drawer frame's just a week there. So we'll order these in week 6, 1,500. Sliding assembly, we need 1,500 of those because there's one sliding assembly for every one. Once again, I don't think there is any inventory, nothing's received earlier, so we simply go back to there, and so there's 0, 1,500, and a week on that one, I believe, as well. Yeah, a week on the sliding assembly. So we will also order that in week 6. Now the bearings, we actually need 4 for every sliding assembly. That was noted here. So we can do a quick thing here. We could actually put the formula in 4 times this amount, because remember we're lining up with sliding assembly now. So we need 6,000 of those. I believe we had some inventory on hand. We had 100 of those on hand. So let's note that here. There's 100. That means we're going to need 5,900. And we got to figure out when we need to order these. So the bearings just take a week. 5,900 a week later. So let's put that in. This becomes an order of 5,900. So for the rail, I believe it's one rail. Yeah, one rail. We have 900, and we have some lot sizing here. So we need one of those. So that lines up again. You need one rail. Remember, it's not the 6,000 because there's 4 bearings for every sliding assembly. There's one rail for every sliding assembly. So it's 1,500. Lines up with this here. There are 900 in inventory. That's going to give us our requirements. I believe, what do we got? Yeah, 900. So we got, this will be, we need 600. But here, we noted here, you have to order them in 1,000. And we're going to have to order them 3 weeks. So we're back here, way back here. Not 1 week, 2 weeks, but 3 weeks. And remember, that is the lead time on that. It takes 3 weeks, and it corresponds to our time phase. That's a double check on your thing that you do wind up in week 3 here. We're going to order 1,000 because we only need 600, but we got to order 1,000. And what we'll do is we'll note the extra. So I'm going to just note that here. Sometimes we'll color code these things too. We'll put this in red just so we note that that is for the next time that we're going to have an extra 400. So that will get transferred to another MRP sheet so that we're aware of that idea, that because we only need 600, we had to order 1,000, so you have to order enough to cover what you need, so you can't order under that. We can't order less than 1,000, so we had to order 1,000, and that gives us 400 left over. So that's really all there is to it. Now, once again, you just need to make sure everything lines up appropriately. We have the dressers and the 1 week lead time. The frame and the drawer assembly are lined up appropriately. Remember, 5 drawers for every dresser. Then we have the dresser assembly broken down into frames. There's 1 frame and 1 sliding assembly. Sliding assembly is further broken down. That's why these are lined up with that. There are 4 bearings for every sliding assembly, and there are 1 rail for every sliding assembly. So make sure it lines up. One other variation to this that you sometimes get, let's say there was that 3rd component that I was talking about, the support. Sometimes they'll do them by levels. They'll do dresser, frame, drawer assembly, and then they would do the support or the base, and then they would go back and break down the ones level by level. I like to deal with them as I encounter them, and then would just go back and reline up if there was a 3rd component or something like that. So that's all there is to MRP. I will post this entire example, the template, and the answer to it on Excel to Canvas for you as well.